what we're doing, or what was asked, is we're wanting to build an exit logic. So our signals, we want them to be reversed. Right? So if we're in a long trade, so for example, if we're in a long trade here, in order to exit that long trade, in order to build an exit signal, we want a short signal to exit a long trade. So what we'll do is when we look at these conditions, all of these conditions here were written based on a long trade. So these conditions, will build them to get a short signal out of BloodHound. Alright, so the first condition that we need to know is we need to wait for the CCI to cross 100, the 100 level. So on the chart, I've marked my lines here. So the gray line is the 100 and the negative 100, and the red line is the 150 mark, which we'll use later on here. So let's take a look at the first one, and we'll find when the CCI crosses the 100. So there's a couple ways we can do this. Let's see. First, I will clear out my previous BloodHound file. I'm going to clear that out, right? So, so I already have this chart, basically pre-set up. I already had BloodHound on the chart, and I already had my CCI indicator put on my chart just to kind of prepare ahead of time. So before I get started, let me provide a file name, a BloodHound file name, and I will just find my previous workshop name, and we'll just put today's date in here. Alright, so I have my BloodHound file named, and I'm going to start by switching over to the logic template, and let me give my logic template a name. So I'll just call it the CCI exit exit signal, I guess. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to start by using a comparison solver, and we'll check to see when the CCI is above or below 100 or negative 100. Actually, no, hold on. Sorry about that. Instead of the comparison solver, let me use a threshold. That's a little more appropriate. So for the thresholds, I'll be looking for 100 and negative, let me take that 0 out, negative 100. So that's what we're going to be looking for. Alright, so next step is I'm going to change my indicator over to the CCI. Alright, I have my CCI selected. I'm just going to use the standard 14 period, and there's only one plot from this indicator, so I'll just leave those check boxes as they are. And alright, I already had my threshold set up, so the next thing is I have to figure out which I want. And so I know that these are exit signals. So when I'm above 100, right, I'm looking to exit a long trade. So when I'm above 100, I want a short output. So I'm going to put a 1 in the at 100 or greater on the short outputs. and I'll do the opposite for the long output. So I know that essentially if the CCI is below 0, most likely I'll be in a short trade. So when the CCI crosses below -100, then that's when I'll be looking for a long output to exit a short trade. Alright, so there we go. Now, as we look at this, so if we look at my thresholds, we'll see that we have 100, then I have 0, 0, 0, and then -100. So always keep in mind, you need to put your values in, these threshold values need to be entered in descending order. Right? So if I did something like this, if I went 100 to -100, that won't work correctly, right? That'll give you some really kind of oddball behavior. So, so just keep in mind that you want to keep your values in descending order, such as this. Now, if we look at, let's take a look at BloodHound's output, right? You'll notice that it's kind of giving us this analog type of an output, or this fuzzy logic type output. So if I wanted to kind of clean that up so it gives me a nice clean digital look, here's a little trick to do. So I can put a 100 in B, and then in D I can put -100. Alright, so I put my threshold value in here twice, and you can see what it did is it kind of got rid of that analog fuzzy logic look to it, and it just gave me a nice clean long or short output. Alright, so if I put these back to 0, right, what BloodHound's doing is it's interpolating between 100 and 0. So let's let me illustrate here on the chart. So as we look at this little section right here on the CCI, right, our indicator is going from 100 down to 0, and we can see as the indicator is approaching 0, we can see on the output, right, our output is approaching 0 as well. And the way that's working is right, it's based on our threshold. So we have these threshold levels going from 100 to 0. And so the outputs here, the outputs are ranging from 1 when we're at 100, and the output ranges down to 0 when we're at 0. So we can see as the indicator approaches 0, BloodHound's output approaches 0, just according to the way that we have this solver set up. Right, so this is BloodHound's fuzzy logic component. Right, so BloodHound's always interpolating between your thresholds. So now so the way this works, if I add another 100 in here, what's happening is that now if we look at the settings, when we're at 100 it's 0, and when we're at 0 it's 0. So now when the indicator ranges between 100 and 0, we told BloodHound we want no output. So we told BloodHound when we're at 0 we want no output, and when we're at 100 we want no output. But then when we're at 100 or greater we want an output. So that is what killed the fuzzy logic component here. And so let me just do the same for the long side there. Alright, so there's a nice clean output to work with. So there's our first setup condition met. So let's bring up the rest of the conditions here. Alright, so we've found when the CCI crosses above 100. Alright, so we can see on the chart whenever the CCI is above the gray line, which is 100, we're getting our short output. So that's kind of the first preparation. And then the next step is now we're looking for the CCI to dip below 90. And then that's when they wanted Raven to exit the trade. Alright, so this dip below 90, I think another way of phrasing that is we're looking for a crossover, right? We're looking for the CCI to cross over the 90. So I'm going to use a crossover solver. And I'm using a crossover solver because the crossover solver gives me one nice clean signal when that occurs. So first, let me set indicator A to my CCI. Right, once again, we're still just using the 14 period CCI, no plots. We'll leave the plots the way they are. And so for indicator B, right, we're looking to cross a value of 90. And another way of saying that is that 90 is an absolute value. So I'm going to put 90 in here. And so I can see now whenever the CCI is crossing below 90, I'm getting a short. We can see that the CCI is crossing the 90 value here a bunch of times, and we're getting those corresponding signals. Now for the 90 value, this really only relates to getting a short signal for exiting our long position. So really I'm only interested in the shorts only in this particular case. All right, so this solver here is really it's only going to be working for the 90 level. So we'll have to build another crossover solver to look at the negative 90 absolute value. But before I get started, let me start naming some of these solvers here. Alright, so this one is looking at the CCI to the 100 and negative 100. Right, this one is looking for the CCI to cross the 90. Alright, so now I need to build one that's looking to cross the negative 90. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little shortcut. I can see I'm right on the solver tab, and I'm going to select this crossover solver. I'll make a copy of it and just go in here and edit this real quick. So I'm looking to cross the negative 90 and set my absolute value to negative 90. And I need to remember that in this case I'm now looking for long signals out of this crossover. Alright, so I think that's set up. So let me just add it to my logic board. We'll drop this down here. Plug that in. We'll make sure it's working correctly. And yep, it sure looks like it's working correctly. Okay. Now essentially these two solvers here are making up essentially kind of what is one condition. So I'm going to join them together using an OR node. And so there we go. Now we have the combination of the CCI crossing above negative 90, right? And so we're getting a long signal. So this long signal will exit any short positions that may be open. And then when the CCI crosses down below 90, positive 90, then we're getting our short output, which should then exit any open long positions. Now the next step is to link these together, right? Because we need the this condition to happen first. So we need the CCI to cross above 100 first before it crosses below the negative 90. So a simple way that I can do this is I could use a signal extender. That would be the easiest way of doing this. So now as we look at this, right, we can see though that even though the CCI is below 100, right, we're still getting still getting a short output. I'm sorry, a short output here, right? So I extended the threshold solver signals. I extended them forward 5 bars. Right? So this is kind of like a first approach at this, and we'll just take a look and see how this is working. And from there, we can fine-tune it from there. All right, so far, so good. So let me kind of point out here that look like right in here, we can see the CCI did not cross above 100, but I'm willing to bet it crossed above 90 and then came down below 90, but we still did not get a signal there. Right, I bet if we take a look at our crossover solvers, yeah, right, so if we look at our crossover solvers, we can see that the indicator crossed above 90 and then came back down, but with this precondition of needing the CCI to cross above 100 first, we can see it removed that signal. Oh, there we go. You know, to help out, I could draw a line on here. So what I'll do is I'll mark that 90 level. There we go. So now we can see that 90 level marked. So this first exit signal is done for us, and there's a secondary one as well. So the next one is the next condition is we're looking for when the CCI goes up and hits 150 as well to exit a trade. So that would be like this point over here. Let me move this. So we can see this other red line on CCI is the 150 value, and we can see that CCI crossed above it. So we're also looking for an exit signal up here and also over here. So we have 2 points where we want 2 more additional exit signals. And I think once again a simple way to handle that is you know, I could just use another set of crossovers here. So how if I go back to my solver tab and I will copy what I have already and just modify them. Alright, let's drop those new solvers on the board. And let's take a look. So we'll take a look at the condition where we're looking for the CCI to cross above 150. So if we look at our rules, essentially when it's written, we're looking for when the CCI hits 150. So in other words, we're looking for the CCI to cross up above 150. But as we look at this condition, we can see that we're actually not getting a short signal until it crosses down below the 150. So these solvers are not quite set up correctly yet. So what we're actually looking for is, let me set the evaluate back to both. Right. So we can see we're getting a long output when it crosses above 150, but really instead of this long output when it crosses above 150, we're looking for a short. Right? We want the opposite. We want the opposite output. So as we look at this solver, as we go down here and look at the outputs, right now we can see the outputs is set to use crosses in direction, right? So crossing in the direction, so essentially the CCI indicator is crossing up above 150, so in that direction, that's a long, sorry, so the indicator is crossing up, so that's why we're getting a long output. And when the indicator crosses down, we're getting a short output. So what we really want to use is we want the crosses against direction. And essentially that will give us the opposite output. So I will set the crosses in direction to 0 and use the crosses against direction. Now as we look at the chart, we can see that now my signals have been reversed, have been flipped. So now I can go in here, set my evaluate back to short only, and there, now I can see it's working. So anytime the CCI crosses above 150, crossing up and above, that's when I'm getting a signal here. Alright, so I need to do the same thing for this other crossover solver, is change my outputs the way my outputs are. And that should do it. Let's take a look at it. There. Yep. So we can see now whenever the CCI crosses down below the 150, we're getting a long signal. Alright, so I need to join those two crossover solvers together with an OR node. And we'll take one last look at them here. Alright, so that's looking good. CCI is crossing below 150, then it's crossing above 150, right? I'm getting my exit signals. So now, next step is to connect it up to my initial condition. So remember this here is kind of my initial condition that has to happen. Right? We have to wait for the CCI to cross above that 100 value before we look at these other two exit conditions. So what I'm going to do, so I put this guy in the middle here since it's needed for both of these separate secondary conditions, I should say. Let's see, so this is kind of my CCI 90 and negative 90. And that OR node is looking at the CCI 150 and negative 150 condition. All right, so I can name my logic nodes here to kind of tell me what they're looking at. So now I can grab another AND node, and now I can take a look at the logic here. And you guys have probably realized by now that really that when the CCI crosses above 150 or below negative 150, obviously it's already crossed the 100 value. So kind of knowing that, I really didn't need this AND node, right? So I can take this guy out of here. This is needed for the 90 level. So essentially, this is so just these two solvers are essentially kind of a standalone. They can stand by themselves as an exit logic. But the one final step is to join these two exit conditions together. So we'll use another OR node to connect this AND node, this OR node together. And now we can see all of the exit logic here. So let's take a look at this guy, right? We can see that we got two double short logics, or short signals, right? We got double exit signals here, and that's okay. Just keep in mind these are exit signals, so they won't open a new trade. Exit signals will never reverse you or open a new position, right? They will only exit an open position. So if you're flat, these exit signals have no effect. So it's okay that you're getting double or triple signals in a row. So essentially that's it. And the way we would use this exit signal is, let me connect to my data feed so that way I can start a strategy. Alright, so in order to use Raven, which is in the strategy component of NinjaTrader, you have to be connected to a data feed. So now I can go into my strategies and I can call up Raven, and at the very top here is my template, and I will load that template, today's template. There we go, April 4th, and click OK. Now right here in this exit logic section, this is where I will select my exit template, and that will exit my trades now. So of course this isn't complete, right? I didn't build any any entry logic, right? So this actually won't do anything because I don't have any entry signals. So I guess since I have this going, how about if I just build some kind of simplistic entry signal into this exit logic, or to go complement this exit logic, and we'll set this up in Raven, and I'll, I guess, kind of give you some little pointers, some tips and tricks about using Raven here. Alright, so I'm going to make a new logic template, and we'll call this, right, my CCI entry, and I'll just make a very, very simple entry logic. How about I'll just do a crossover here. So how about if I look for the CCI CCI 2, let's see, cross above or below the 0 line. Something like that. Yeah. Alright, so I'm looking to cross the 0 line, so I'll set indicator B to an absolute value of 0. And great, there we go. Some nice simple signals there. And I should name this solver. All right, let me open up Raven and load up today's template. Alright, so there's the template we're going to load up. And so one little tip, my first little tip that I always like to do is when I'm loading a BloodHound file into Raven, I always like to take a look at my logic templates first. And the reason why I like to do that, right, is because as I'm going through, you know, I'm testing all these various components, right? I'm connecting leaders and, you know, looking at my logic, making sure my logic is working correctly. You know, sometimes I leave the leaders in a incorrect state, right? This is not the correct. This would not be the correct state for these exit signals, right? The correct state would be to take this last OR node and connect it to the result. So I always like to take a quick little peek to make sure that all my leaders are connected up correctly. So the exit logic looks good. I'll just take a look at my CCI entry, and that's pretty simple. That one looks good as well. And here's another little tip. This CCI entry logic template, since this is the last one that I'm looking at, when I click OK, this is the logic template that will be applied to the chart automatically as soon as I turn Raven on. So that's like another quick little feature. Alright, I can go in here, specify lock in my entry logic, and if you want to use an exit logic, you have to go in and specify your exit logic and lock that in. Let's see. Let's use a limit order, and we'll do like a -2 tick offset. Right. So a negative value will give you a better entry. So this -2 ticks will set up an limit order 2 ticks below the market for a better fill. Alright, a 2-tick better fill. And keep in mind, if I want to back test this, alright, I have to set this to true for back testing. Let's see, ATM. I do have an ATM already built, so let me put that in here. So I have a pretty simple naming convention, I think. So what I did is I just put BH for BloodHound, and T is for target, right? So this ATM will set up a 10-tick target. S is for stop loss, so it'll set up a 6-tick stop loss, and then the quantity, I believe I have one for 7 contracts. Alright, and the next step is I'll leave it on a sim account, and I'll just enable it and fire this off. And so now we just have to wait.
Order pending.
Oh, look at that. There we go. So the CCI just crossed our 0 line and fired off a trade. Boy, that was pretty lucky there. All right, so now you can see that we got it. We're waiting for a 2-tick better fill. So we need price to pull back 2 ticks and pick up this limit order short. So we're getting touched, but of course, oh, it looks like we should have got picked up there. Maybe. NinjaTrader did not consider it being filled. I guess, well, what happened was the bid, even though someone might have ticked up with the ask, but the bid might have still have been below our limit order price. That's probably what happened. So, darn, we missed getting picked up, but you know what I can do? I can slide this down here and
Order filled.
there we go. So I could manually chase that trade and got picked up, and now we can just watch this thing play out here.
Target filled.
Here, I guess while I'm waiting for some questions, let me show you some other tips about using Raven. So let me open up the strategy. And actually, first let me build an example. So I'm going to add another entry signal here. Alright, so I have two templates now with 2 different entries. So I'll be looking for the CCI to cross the 0 and enter, and then when the CCI crosses the 100 to enter. So let me build. I need to build the solver crossing the 100 value. And let's see here, actually. Yeah, I'll have to build some new solvers. So I'm just going to copy this crossover solver here. So this will be looking for the 100 crossover. And I will copy this one and change it to look for the negative 100. Okay. Now I just need to add those new solvers to my logic board and connect them up. So I need to connect these 2 guys together with an OR node. Alright, good. Okay, I can close that out. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my strategy, go into Raven. I need to, in order to modify anything, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my entry logic. But in order, you can see how everything's grayed out, so I have to turn my strategy off before I can modify anything. And now I can see that I have 2 different entry logics. So if I select one right now and run Raven with one of them selected, Raven is locked to that particular entry logic. It's locked to it. And the only way you can change it is, right, just like what I'm doing right now, is I had to disable my strategy, go and change it, and then I had to re-enable my strategy again. If I want to be able to change Raven to use a different logic on the fly, I can leave this to none. I can set this to none. And so I re-enabled my strategy. I can click OK. And to help eliminate the confusion, I'm going to remove BloodHound as the indicator off of my chart. So now I just have BloodHound from the strategy, from Raven. And you'll notice the difference because you see how this button up here is orange. It has orange text. So that tells you that this is BloodHound inside of Raven. And so now what I can do is I can select which logic template that I want Raven to execute trades from on the fly. I can change them on the fly, and Raven will do so. And, oh, I notice I'm getting confused. I'm expecting a signal here because I'm seeing my CCI cross above the 0, but remember, I set my CCI to the calculate on bar close to false. So let me set this CCI, let me set this back to true. There we go. Yeah. So if we get another bar closing up, then our CCI will cross the 0 line, and since I have the CCI 0 entry selected, we'll get an entry from Raven. So usually this time of day there's not much movement in the oil market, so we'll just kind of have to wait and see if we get lucky here. Alright, so kind of back to what I was explaining earlier, right? So the way I have Raven set up now, right, the way I have Raven set up now with my entry logic set to none, that allows me to switch between my two entry logics here, whichever one I want. So now I can start using the CCI 100 crossover, or I could use the CCI 0 crossover, whichever one I prefer. So so within one BloodHound file, you can build different systems, right? You could build a system that works better in a fast-moving trending market, or you could build a system that kind of works better when price is consolidating, right? Kind of like what price is doing right now, right? Price is kind of consolidated here, right? So you could build a separate logic template that kind of works better in this consolidation, and when you think you're in consolidation, right, just change your logic template over and Raven will start executing based off of that. So. Alright, looks like Bob might have a question here. Alright, Bob is saying a simple question about the limit order capability of the recent upgrade. Can it be used to place a limit on the next bar open? On the next bar open. No, not on the open. The way the limit order offset is calculated is it's based off of the previous bar's close. So let me try and provide an example here. Let me draw a little dot here. So so the diamond here is kind of representing the closing price of this bar, and so when you specify a limit order offset, so let me go into Raven here. Actually, I'll add another Raven so we can actually read the text here. So this limit order offset from entry, if you use ticks, right, it's basically the offset is based off of the closing price of the bar. If you want to use a limit order to guarantee you a fill, if you set this at a positive 1 tick, essentially a positive number will put you above the current market, and of course your limit order will get filled at the best price. So that's kind of one way to guarantee an instant fill at wherever the bidder ask is. Alright, so let's see. Mike is asking, please explain in Raven Trade Management ATR settings. So the ATR is an average true range. Also, let me show you as well. That's also explained in the documentation. So if I bring up the documentation again, and I'm going to scroll down here, and I can look on the right hand side. There's SI Raven, and let me scroll down to, let's see, I believe it's under Trade Management. Yep. So in Raven, let me open up Raven here and show you what Mike is asking about. So as I look inside of Raven, Mike is asking about this measurement unit. So you can see you can set things up in ticks, percent, or an ATR, right? So, oops, sorry, let me put it back on ATR. Right, so this ATR is, an indicator. It's actually using the ATR indicator to do its calculations. And so as I go back to the instructions, right, so there is, an explanation here. So it's when you're using the ATR measurement unit, right, so it uses a multiple of the instrument's ATR value to calculate an offset from the entry price. So let me so I kind of understand what's going on. I need to add the ATR onto my chart, so that way we can visually see what the ATR is doing. And let me just change my color to white, and let me change the plot style a little bit. Yeah. And I'll move this up. Right, so you can see, the ATR varies a little bit based on, it's basically, the ATR is used to measure volatility in the market or on your instrument. I'm using a 5 range, so that really limits the volatility because a bar can't go more than 5 ticks, right? So my ATR here is a little limited. If I change this over to a minute chart, my ATR would vary quite a bit more. But we can see that there's a value that the ATR is calculating, and so right now it kind of looks like it's ranging from the upper 0.05 to a lower 0.05, right? So the range of this ATR, it's really, we can see it's stuck in this 0.05 range. That's because I'm using a 5 range, right? So it should be. So I guess to make a better example, let's use a 1 minute bar. Yeah, so here now we can see the ATR is ranging quite a bit more now. So we can see it's ranging from almost 0.06 down to 0.04. And let's see, how about if I change this over to a 5 minute? and now it's going to range even more. There we go. So what the ATR is doing, right, is it's measuring the length of these bars, and it's kind of averaging them out to tell you what the volatility is. So let's see, I'm using a 14 period. So let's kind of use this area here as an example. Right, we can see right in here there's a little bit more volatility, right? The bars are ranging a little more as opposed to this area where the bars are really kind of range bound, right? And we can see that is reflected in the ATR, the ATR's value. So we can see as the bars increase in size and gain more volatility, we can see the ATR the ATR value gets greater, right? Increases, and so you can use this ATR value as a multiple in your profit target and stop loss. So let me bring up Raven again. Right, so if we're using this ATR value, right, we have to set a period for the ATR, and so this ATR value will be used as a multiple to calculate your profit target and your stop loss. Right, and I can see that you know, as I'm looking at the values here, you know, it looks like this 0.1, it's literally relates to price movement in your instrument, right? So if I'm looking at, let me pick a point right here. So let me pick this ATR value right here with the green dot, right? That is like quite literally that ATR value. Let me scroll this over. You can see the ATR value is 0.12. What that's telling me is that the oil is averaging 12 cents, a 12-cent range in movement in the price of a 5-minute bar. So, right. So as the bars can begin to increase in their volatility, you know, their average range, their average true range, so ATR's average true range, it has now increased to 12 cents of movement in the oil market. And so that 12 cents can be used to vary your profit target and your stop loss. So kind of the very simple answer of what this ATR is doing is it's applying whatever the current market volatility is, it's applying that volatility to your stop loss and profit target, right? So if price is really moving a lot, right, you can increase the size of your profit target so you can gain more profit. And it'll also increase the size of your stop loss so you're not stopped out too quickly if the market volatility picks up. So yeah, I guess with that, guys, I will wrap this up, and thanks for joining me.